One of the most misleading signals in advisor change is a client who stays.
Yes, because from the firm side, that can look like proof the relationship held.
The account is still open. The meetings are still on the calendar. Nothing obvious broke.
And still, underneath that, the relationship may already be getting weaker in ways the dashboard won't catch right away.
This is Advising Humans, where we talk about the human side of advice and what's often happening underneath the visible conversation.
And in this episode, we're looking at one of the most overlooked parts of advisor change: silent disengagement.
Because not all relationship loss is obvious.
Sometimes the client doesn't leave, they just stop engaging in the same way.
I think this is such an important idea because a lot of firms are used to looking for the obvious signs of loss.
Right, closed accounts, transferred assets, angry calls, a clear decision to leave.
But that's not the only way trust weakens.
Not at all. Sometimes the client stays, the account stays open, the meetings still happen, nothing looks dramatic from the outside, but underneath that, the relationship has already shifted.
That's what makes silent disengagement so easy to miss.
Exactly. The client is still technically there, but they are no longer as committed, as open, or as anchored as they used to be.
And that can show up in a lot of subtle ways.
Yes, the next dollar goes somewhere else. A new account gets opened elsewhere. A bonus gets invested with another provider. A property gets sold, and the proceeds never come into the relationship. The client stops consolidating. Referrals dry up. The energy changes.
So from the firm side, it can still look like retention.
Right, retained on paper, but much weaker in reality.
I think that distinction is really important.
It really is. Because if a firm only looks for dramatic exits, it can completely miss the early signs that trust has already thinned out.
And once that happens, the relationship may keep functioning for a while, but not in the same way.
Exactly. The client may still take the meeting. They may still be cordial. They may still keep part of the assets with the firm. But they are no longer moving toward the relationship with the same confidence.
So the relationship has not ended, but it's no longer growing from the same place.
That's right. And that matters a lot more than firms sometimes realize. Because wealth management is not only about keeping existing accounts open, it's also about deepening trust over time, growing wallet share, and creating enough confidence that clients keep bringing more of their financial life into the relationship.
And silent disengagement interrupts that.
Very much so. It turns what looked like a stable relationship into something a lot more fragile. The client is still there, but they are holding back.
I also think this is more likely now because clients have so many more options.
Absolutely. It's much easier now for someone to spread assets around without making one big visible move.
They don't have to fire the firm in order to pull back.
Exactly. They can simply stop deepening the relationship. And in some ways, that's what makes this kind of disengagement more dangerous because it doesn't always trigger an alarm early.
Yes, the usual signs can still look okay for a while.
Right, the account is open. The balance may not even change much right away. Market growth can cover a lot. But underneath that, the client may already be deciding to place trust somewhere else.
That line is so important. What changes first is often not the account. It's where the client starts placing trust.
Because that's really what this is. Silent disengagement is not just a behavioral issue, it's a trust issue that has started to show up in behavior.
And I think that's why advisor change is such a common trigger for it.
Yes, because the advisor may have been the person holding the relationship together emotionally, and when that changes, the client can start pulling back even if they don't leave.
They are less sure, less open, and less inclined to bring more over.
Exactly. And that affects more than assets. It affects advocacy too.
Right. Because a client who feels less confident is probably not referring friends.
That's right. Referrals come from confidence. They come from the feeling that this relationship is strong enough to recommend. When advisor change weakens that feeling, advocacy often drops before anyone says a word about it.
So the firm may think we kept the client.
But the more important question may be, did we keep the strength of the relationship?
That's a much better question.
I think so. Because silent disengagement is really about the strength of the relationship, not just whether the client technically stays.
And once you see it that way, the whole situation looks different.
It does. You start to realize that no complaint does not mean no problem. No transfer form does not mean no drift. No big exit does not mean the client still feels deeply connected.
Sometimes the relationship is already weakening, even while it still looks intact.
Exactly. And that's why this part of advisor change deserves so much more attention. If firms only manage the visible transition, they may miss the invisible one happening underneath.
So if we were putting this into one line, it might be this. Sometimes the client doesn't leave, the relationship just gets weaker.
I think that's exactly right. And if you want to navigate advisor change well, you have to care about that quieter weakening, not just the obvious signs of loss. Because by the time the loss is obvious, the relationship may already have changed.
If this conversation made you think differently about what hidden relationship loss can look like, share it with another advisor or leader who cares about more than just the obvious retention numbers.
And if you want a more consistent way for your team to handle advisor change, the Advisor Change Transition Playbook Suite for Advisors gives you shared language, meeting flow, and practical tools to help make these transitions feel steadier before clients start quietly pulling back.
Because one of the most important things an advisor can do is catch the quiet drift early.
Thanks for listening to Advising Humans.
We'll see you next time.